Welcome to session 6 of our study on the second book of Esdras. We'll conclude Fourth Ezra, or the large middle section of our book, by reading and discussing chapters 13 and 14 in this session. We will see the vision of the man from the sea and learn about the writing of the sacred books. We'll also continue to introduce other books from the Apocrypha. This time it will be devotional writings, a prayer and 3 psalms that found their way into the Septuagint and ultimately the Apocrypha. But first, a prayer. O God, our Father, open our eyes and enlighten our minds as we study your word. So grant that our minds may know your truth and our hearts may feel your love, and then confirm and strengthen our wills that we may go out to live what we have learned. Through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen. 4 of the books of the Apocrypha are considered to be devotional writings. Psalm 151 and the prayer of Manasseh, and 2 additions to the book of Daniel. Manasseh was a 7th century BCE king of Judah, the southern kingdom. He was the son of Hezekiah and the father of Amon, the grandfather of the reformed king Josiah. Manasseh was a king from about 686 to 642 BCE, 44 years. You can read the story of Manasseh in 2 Kings chapter 21, where he was described as an evil king. The second book of Chronicles, chapter 33, also gives us a story about Manasseh, but with a different ending. There we are told the king of Assyria took Manasseh captive in manacles, bound him with fetters, and brought him to Babylon. There he prayed to God, who heard his plea and restored him again to Jerusalem and to his kingdom. The prayer of Manasseh purports to be the actual words of prayer that Manasseh offered while he was in manacles in Babylon. Psalm 151 is the final psalm in the book of Psalms in the Greek Septuagint. It is not in the Hebrew Bible nor in the Roman Catholic Bible. It is just a short psalm, 7 verses, one that tells the story of David, who he was, where he came from, and his first great feat of strength, the slaying of the giant Goliath. This psalm was also found in the Dead Sea Scrolls. The other 2 devotional writings in the Apocrypha are written as psalms and included in the additions to the book of Daniel. The prayer of Azariah and the song of the 3 Jews are set in 6th century Babylon, where Daniel and his 3 friends, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, are captives of the Babylonian king Nebuchadnezzar. The 3 young men were given new names by their captors that you may be more familiar with: Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. After refusing to worship a 90-foot high statue, the 3 young men were bound and thrown into the furnace of flaming fire. The king commanded that the furnace be heated to 7 times its normal heat. It was so hot that the men carrying the 3 young Jews to the furnace were killed, and so our 3 young heroes are thrown into a fiery furnace. The prayer of Azariah is the prayer spoken by this young man after they have been tossed into the furnace. It's a prayer of contrition for the sins of Judah and a celebration of praise and confidence in the Lord. Azariah says the young men are willing to be sacrificed to the Lord, yet with a contrite heart and a humble spirit may we be accepted, as though it were with burnt offerings of rams and bulls, or with tens of thousands of fat lambs. Such may be our sacrifices be in your sight today. And yet he still has hope for the future. Deliver us in accordance with your marvelous works, and bring glory to your name, O Lord. The Song of the 3 Jews, sometimes called the Hymn of the 3 Young Men, continues from Azariah's prayer. An angel of the Lord came down into the furnace with the 3 friends. Then the 3 glorified and blessed God. The first few verses constitute a song of thanksgiving. The main part of the song, the final 39 verses, is a litany of praise. Bless the Lord, all you works of the Lord. Sing praise to him and highly exalt him forever. Bless the Lord, all rain and dew. Sing praise to him and highly exalt him forever. With that, we move on to the second book of Esdras. We saw earlier that the vision of the eagle was intended to provide comfort for the author's contemporaries by indicating when the end of the Roman Empire and of this age would occur. In the course of that vision, the role of the Messiah in the events of the end was also introduced. In chapter 13, the vision of the man from the sea offers a further description of the role of the Messiah, which, like the vision of the eagle, is based on the Son of Man vision in Daniel 7. There is a suggestion, however, that the author also drew on other already existing traditions in adding the vision of the man of the sea. So we begin with chapter 13, verses 1 through 7. After 7 days, I dreamed a dream in the night, and behold, a wind arose from the sea and stirred up all its waves. As I kept looking, the wind made something like a figure of a man coming up out of the heart of the sea. And I saw that this man flew with the clouds of heaven, and wherever he turned his face to look, everything under his gaze trembled. And whenever his voice issued from his mouth, all who heard his voice melted as wax melts when it feels the fire. After this, I looked and saw that an innumerable multitude of people were gathered together from the four winds of heaven to make war against the man who came up out of the sea. And I looked and saw that he carved out for himself a great mountain and flew up onto it. And I tried to see the region or place from which the mountain was carved, but I could not. This vision falls into 3 parts. First, the appearance of the man from the sea. Second, the defeat of the forces opposed to him. These are the innumerable multitude of people that we just saw gathered together. And third, the summoning of a peaceful company. In verse 2 here, we saw the wind arising from the sea and stirring up the waves. This is quite similar to chapter 7 of Daniel, verse 2. However, in Daniel, it is the beast rising up from the sea. The one like a man comes down from the clouds. If a man described here sounds like a god, that is intentional. In verse 7, Ezra could not see the place from which the mountain was carved. That is because it was a symbol of the New Jerusalem, which still belongs to the heavenly world. Now we go on with verse 9 and learn more about the multitude. After this, I looked and saw that all who had gathered together against him to wage war with him were filled with fear, yet they dared to fight. When he saw the onrush of the approaching multitude, he neither lifted his hand nor held a spear or any weapon of war. But I saw only how he sent forth from his mouth something like a stream of fire, and from his lips a flaming breath, and from his tongue he shot forth a storm of sparks. All these were mingled together, the stream of fire and the flaming breath and the great storm, and fell on the unrushing multitude that was prepared to fight and burned up all of them, so that suddenly nothing was seen of the innumerable multitude, but only the dust of ashes and the smell of smoke. When I saw it, I was amazed. After this, I saw the same man come down from the mountain and call to himself another multitude that was peaceable. Then the forms of many people appeared to him, some of whom were joyful and some sorrowful. Some of them were bound, and some were bringing others as offerings. After defeating the multitudes, his enemies, the Messiah will gather those who will be his subjects in his kingdom. The ones with joy on their faces are presumably Jews, the others with sorrow are Gentiles, although Gentiles are not in fact mentioned in the interpretation we'll read in a little bit. The theme of the conversion of the Gentiles occurs in several Old Testament writings. We go on to the last half of verse 13 and an interpretation of this vision. So, verse 13. Then I woke up in great terror and prayed to the Most High and said, "From the beginning you have shown your servant these wonders and have deemed me worthy to have my prayer heard by you. Now show me the interpretation of this dream also. For as I considered it in my mind, alas for those who will be left in those days, and still more, alas for those who are not left. For those who are not left will be sad, because they understand the things that are reserved for the last days, but cannot attain them. But alas for those who are left, and for that very reason, for they shall see the great danger and much distress, as these dreams show. Yet it is better to come into these things, though incurring peril, than to pass from the world like a cloud, and not to see what will happen in the last days." He answered me and said, I will tell you the interpretation of the vision, and I will also explain to you the things that you have mentioned. As for what you said about those who survive and concerning those who do not survive, this is the interpretation. The one who brings the peril at the time will protect those who fall into peril, who have works and faith toward the Almighty. Understand, therefore, that those who are left are more blessed than those who have died. Ezra, who is just asked to be told the meaning of his dream, does not at this point know the vision of the man from the sea refers to the Messiah. He is told that those who die before the end will miss not only the distress, but also the reign of the Messiah, which will follow. But it is preferable to survive the period of distress and live through it in order to enjoy the blessing of the Messianic kingdom than to die before the end. The righteous who survive will be protected. So let's go with the interpretation, verse 25. This is the interpretation of the vision. As for your seeing a man come from the heart of the sea, this is he whom the Most High has been keeping for many ages, who will himself deliver his creation, and he will direct those who are left. And as for your seeing wind and fire and a storm coming out of his mouth, and as for his not holding a spear or weapon of war, yet destroying the onrushing multitude that came to conquer him, this is the interpretation. The days are coming when the Most High will deliver those who are on earth, and the bewilderment of mind shall come over those who inhabit the earth. They shall plan to make war against one another, city against city, place against place, people against people, and kingdom against kingdom. When these things take place and the signs occur that I showed you before, then my Son will be revealed, whom you saw as a man coming up from the sea. Then when all the nations hear his voice, all the nations shall leave their own lands and the warfare that they have against one another. And an innumerable multitude shall be gathered together, as you saw, wishing to come and conquer him. But he shall stand on top of the Mount Zion, and Zion shall come and be made manifest to all people, prepared and built, as you saw the mountain carved out without hands. Then he, my Son, will reprove the assembled nations for their ungodliness. This was to be symbolized by the storm, and will reproach them to their face with the evil thoughts and the torments with which they are to be tortured, which were symbolized by the flames, and will destroy them without effort by means of the law, which was symbolized by the fire. So this man from the sea is identified as the Messiah. The thought here is that the Messiah will be God's agent in the deliverance of the world. He will order the condition of life for those who are left to participate in his kingdom. We notice that verse 29 through 31 don't seem to relate to the vision, but describe signs of the end as additional information. In verses 35 and 36, there are references to the pre-existent heavenly Jerusalem, or Zion. People will be able to see the New Jerusalem. The Messiah here is seen as a judge more than a military leader. So we go on to verse 39. And as for your seeing him gather to himself another multitude that was peaceable, these are the 9 tribes that were taken away from their own land into exile in the days of King Hoshea, whom Shalmaneser, king of the Assyrians, made captives. He took them across the river, and they were taken into another land. But they formed this plan for themselves, that they would leave the multitude of the nations and go to a more distant region where no humans had ever lived, so that there at least they might keep their statutes that they had not kept in their own land. And they went in by the narrow passage of the river Euphrates, for at that time the Most High performed signs for them and stopped the channels of the river until they had crossed over. Through that region there was a long way to go, a journey of a year and a half, and that country is called Azareth. Then they lived there until the last times, and now when they are about to come again, the Most High will stop the channels of the river again, so that they may be able to cross over. Therefore you saw the multitude gathered together in peace, but those who are left of your people who are found within my holy borders shall be saved. Therefore, when he destroys the multitude of the nations that are gathered together, he will defend the people who remain. and then he will show them very many wonders. After destroying his enemies, the Messiah will bring the 10 northern tribes back to the land of Israel. This seems to be an expression of the common belief that in the last days, the dispersed Jews would all return to Israel. At the time this was written, there seems to have been a good deal of speculation about the fate of the 10 tribes. 2 Kings 17 describes the deportation of the inhabitants of the northern kingdom, that is, the 10 tribes, to Assyria in 722 BCE. But the exiles are not mentioned further in the Old Testament. It seems likely that they were absorbed into the local population and just lost their identity. In verse 49 and 50, we're told that when he destroys the multitude of the nations that are gathered together, he will defend the people who remain. Presumably those who remain means the Jews already in Palestine as well as the 10 tribes. Now we move to verse 52 or 51 through the end of the chapter. I said, O sovereign Lord, explain this to me. Why did I see the man coming up from the heart of the sea? He said to me, just as no one can explore or know what it is in the depths of the sea, so no one on earth can see my son or those who are with him except in the time of his day. This is the interpretation of the dream that you saw. And you alone have been enlightened about this, because you have forsaken your own ways and have applied yourself to mine and have searched out my law. For you have devoted your life to wisdom and called understanding your mother. Therefore I have shown you these things, for there is a reward laid up with the Most High. For it will be that after 3 more days I will tell you other things and explain the weighty and the wondrous matters to you. Then I got up and walked in the field, giving great glory and praise to the Most High for the wonders that he did from time to time, and because he governs the times and whatever things come to pass in their seasons. And I stayed there 3 days. Ezra asks why he saw a man coming out of the depths of the sea, and is told that this was a metaphor. Just as no one can know the depths of the sea, no one can see the Messiah. The Messiah was already in existence, but was hidden by God until the time comes for his activity. Only Ezra was allowed to see the man. Ezra's unique position, here attributed to his devotion to the law and to wisdom, is stressed. The pattern of a week's time is again broken here. Ezra is told 3 days this time. The New English Bible says that Ezra went again to the field, but since he was already in the field, perhaps he went for a walk in the field, which is the translation we get in the NRSV. So we move now to chapter 14, where Ezra is given not more visions, but a task to do. And he is told to prepare for the end of his life. So chapter 14, the first 18 verses. On the 3rd day, while I was sitting under an oak, suddenly a voice came out of a bush opposite me and said, Ezra, Ezra. And I answered, Here I am, Lord. And I rose to my feet. Then he said to me, I revealed myself in a bush and spoke to Moses when my people were in bondage in Egypt. And I sent him and led my people out of Egypt. And I led him up on Mount Sinai, where I kept him with me many days. I told him many wondrous things and showed him the secrets of the times and declared to him the end of the times. Then I commanded him, saying, These words you shall publish openly, and these you shall keep secret. And now I say to you, lay up in your heart the signs that I have shown you, the dreams that you have seen, and the interpretation that you have heard. For you shall be taken up from among humankind, and henceforth you shall live with my son and with those who are like you until the times are ended. The age has lost its youth, and the times begin to grow old. For the age is divided into 12 parts, and 9 of its parts have already passed, as well as half of the 10th part. So 2 of its parts remain beside the half of the 10th part. Now therefore set your house in order, and reprove your people, comfort the lowly among them, and instruct those who are wise. And now renounce the life that is corruptible, and put away from your mortal thoughts, cast away from you the burdens of humankind, and divest yourself now your weak nature. Lay to one side the thoughts that are most grievous unto you, and hurry to escape from these times, for evils worse than those that you have now seen happen shall take place hereafter. For the weaker the world becomes through old age, the more shall evils be increased upon its inhabitants. Truth shall go farther away, and falsehood shall come near. For the edge that you saw in the vision is already hurrying to come. On the third day, Ezra hears the voice of an angel, or perhaps God, and we hear the story of Moses in the burning bush from Exodus. In accordance with his role as the restorer of the scriptures, Ezra is presented as a second Moses. Here we see God speaking to Ezra from a bush, just like Moses was. In this passage, Moses is presented as the recipient of apocalyptic visions, even though nothing in Exodus or Deuteronomy suggests anything like that. But it is another way that the author can tie Ezra and Moses together. Verse 9 tells us that Ezra's life is about to end, though not through death, but by being translated to heaven. We read that this age is divided into 12 parts, and more than 9 of them have already passed. So now is the time for Ezra to get his house in order. Again, dividing history into a set number of ages is a common characteristic of apocalyptic writings, including Daniel, for example. So let's go on with verse 19. Then I answered and said, "Let me speak in your presence, Lord, for I will go as you have commanded me, and I will reprove the people who are now living. But who will warn those who will be born hereafter? For the world lies in darkness, and its inhabitants are without light. For your law has been burned, so that no one knows the things that have been done or will be done by you. If then I have found favor with you, send the Holy Spirit into me, and I will write everything that has happened in the world from the beginning, the things that were written in your law, so that people may be able to find the path, that those who want to live in the last days may do so." He answered me and said, "Go and gather the people and tell them not to speak to you for 40 days. But prepare for yourself many writing tablets, and take with you Sarah, Deborah, Selmiah, Ethanus, and Aziel, these 5 who are trained to write rapidly. And you shall come here, and I will light in your heart the lamp of understanding, which shall not be put out until what you are about to write is finished. And when you have finished, some things you shall make public, and some you shall deliver in secret to the wise. Tomorrow at this hour you shall begin to write." Ezra acknowledges his responsibility to speak to those who were then alive, but is concerned about what will happen in the future. The scriptures have been destroyed, and he asks to be given the inspiration to restore them. He is told to prepare the writing tablets and take 5 specific men with him: Sarah, Deborah, Selmiah, Ethanus, and Aziel. So let's go on to verses 27 through 36. Then I went as he commanded me, and I gathered all the people together and said, "Hear these words, O Israel. At first our ancestors lived as aliens in Egypt, and they were liberated from there and received the law of life, which they did not keep, which you also have transgressed after them. Then land was given to you for a possession in the land of Zion, but you and your ancestors committed iniquity and did not keep the ways the Most High commanded you. And since he is a righteous judge, in due time he took from you what he had given. And now you are here, and your people are farther in the interior. If you then will rule over your minds and discipline your hearts, you shall be kept alive, and after death you shall obtain mercy. For after death the judgment will come, when we shall live again, and then the names of the righteous shall become manifest, and the deeds of the ungodly shall be disclosed. But let no one come to me now, and let no one seek me for 40 days. As he was commanded, Ezra summoned the people and tells them not to seek him for 40 days. But the speech also provides the opportunity for Ezra to give his last instructions. The speech consists of a summary of the main events of Israel's history from the time in Egypt to the exile. It seems intended to provide a deliberate contrast to the summary given in the prayer with which Second Esdras 3 through 14 began. In chapter 3, Ezra blamed God for the situation in which Israel found herself. But here the exile is accepted as being the fully merited punishment for Israel's sin, and God is called a just judge. Chapter 3 ended on a note of despair, while this speech ended on a note of hope. Now we go to verse 37 through the end of the chapter. So I took the 5 men, as he had commanded me, and we proceeded to the field and remained there. And on the next day a voice called me, saying, Ezra, open your mouth and drink what I give you to drink. So I opened my mouth, and a full cup was offered to me, and it was full of something like water, but its color was like fire. I took it and drank, and when I had drunk it, my heart poured forth understanding, and wisdom increased in my breast. For my spirit retained its memory, and my mouth was opened and was no longer closed. Moreover, the Most High gave understanding to the 5 men, and by turns they wrote what was dictated, using characters that they did not know. They sat 40 days, and they wrote during the daytime and ate their bread at night. But as for me, I spoke in the daytime and was not silent at night. So during the 40 days, 94 books were written. And when the 40 days were ended, the Most High spoke to me, saying, Make public the 24 books that you wrote first, and let the worthy and the unworthy read them. But keep the 70 that were written last, in order to give them to the wise among your people. For in them is the spring of understanding, and the fountain of wisdom, and the river of knowledge. And I did so. Ezra carries out the instructions that had been given to him. He had prayed for inspiration, and now this is granted to him. He is told to drink a cup of liquid which fills him with understanding and wisdom and enables him to dictate the scriptures. The 5 men are also given inspiration which enables them to copy out the scriptures that Ezra dictates. They copied 94 books, but only 24 are made public. The books of the Old Testament, the others are held back in order to be given only to the wise. And so it was to be. We note here that the Syriac version adds in the 7th year of the 6th week, 5,000 years and 3 months and 12 days after creation. At that time Ezra was caught up and taken to the place of those who were like him, after he had written all these things, and was called the scribe of knowledge of the Most High forever and ever. This is the 7th vision, sometimes called the legend of Ezra and the Holy Scriptures. The 24 books are the 5 books of the Torah, or the Law, and the 8 books of the prophets, that would be Joshua, Judges, Samuel, King, Isaiah, Ezekiel, and Jeremiah, as well as the 12 minor prophets counted as one book. 1st and 2nd Samuel and 1st and 2nd Kings are also each counted as one book. There were 11 books that make up the writings: Psalms, Proverbs, Job, Ecclesiastes, Song of Solomon, Ruth, Lamentation, Daniel, Esther, and Ezra and Nehemiah, which is counted as one book, and 1st and 2nd Chronicles also as one book. These are the books that we know as the Old Testament. Of course, several of them were not written until after 557, which is the date which 2nd Esdras 3 through 14 was nominally written. But they were all available by late in the 1st century CE, when we think the author composed this book. So this ends 4th Ezra, or chapters 3 through 14 of the 2nd book of Esdras. In our next session, we'll read chapters 15 and 16, the final chapters of the book of 2nd Esdras. They are a quite separate work from the chapters 1 and 2 and from 3 through 14. In some ways, these final chapters look like an appendix to the previous writings. Often they're called the prophecies of doom. If you're not yet signed up for the Zoom discussion sessions, you can send an email to online.classes@northgateumc.org, and we will send you the Zoom link. In the meantime, have a good week.